What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Alright, so this is a request from one of my subscribers. They reminded me of this yesterday. In this particular video, I'm going to address a hypothetical matchup between the 67 76ers and the 83 Sixers. Who would win in this hypothetical matchup? Now, let me preface this video by saying that there is no real answer to this. Nobody really knows who would win between those two teams because it's impossible for it to happen. They played in two different leagues, different sets of rules. They didn't. You don't have any historical matchups, real in-game, in real-time matchups to look at and analyze. So you don't really know. You just guess. But that's most of the fun. I do want to say that recency bias is a real thing. You go back to 1981, there was a committee that voted the 67 Sixers the best team of the first 35 years of the NBA. So that would include George Mikan's Minneapolis Lakers. That would include the 72 Lakers. And that would include, of course, Bill Russell's Boston Celtics dynasty. But back in 2020, Sixers fans voted the 83 Sixers the greatest team in the history of the franchise. Number two, it wasn't even close, 95% to 5%. 2001 Sixers. They didn't even vote for the 67 Sixers because it's so long ago, they don't really remember how great that team was. And I think some fans don't even realize that Philly has technically 3 championships. The 83 Sixers, the 67 Sixers, and the 1955 Cincinnati Royals. But anyway, who wins? I don't know. Both teams were great. As far as their individual seasons were concerned, you can make an argument that 67 Sixers were a little bit more dominant. The 83 Sixers went 65-17 during their season. And this was the last year of the 3-round playoff. After this, the opening round was added to the playoffs, best of 5. And then starting, I think, in 2002, that's when we started seeing a best of 7 in the first round. But the 83 Sixers, 65-17, their head coach was Billy Cunningham. And we have a similar problem with this as we did with the Durant Warriors versus the Bulls, and that the head coach for one team was a reserve or a sixth man on the other team. Steve Kerr, the head coach of the Durant Warriors, was of course was a reserve for the Chicago Bulls in '96. Billy Cunningham, the head coach of the 83 Sixers, was the sixth man, but a far better player than Steve Kerr, but the sixth man for the 67-70 Sixers. They averaged 112.1 points per game. They gave up 104.4 points per game. Offensive rating 108.3, fifth. Defensive rating 5th. Net differential was number 1 in the NBA at 7.4. They were 8th in scoring out of 23 teams, and points yielded 7th out of 23 teams. In the first round, which was the semifinals back then, they swept the New York Knicks. In the next round, they beat Milwaukee in the conference finals 4-1. And then in the NBA finals, they beat the Lakers. They swept the Lakers famously 4-0. It was in that series where Moses Malone out-rebounded Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I think it was something like 72-30. just complete destruction of the Lakers. The 67 76ers were even more dominant. The only major stat that the 83 Sixers led the NBA in that I can recall is rebounding. They're the number one rebounding team at 47.9 rebounds per game. But the 67 76ers were even more dominant in so many ways. They were 68-13, first in the NBA Eastern Division. Their head coach was Alex Hannum, who was also the head coach of those 1958 St. Louis Hawks that upsetted the Boston Celtics in that finals. They averaged 125.2 points per game. 125.2. Number one in the NBA. Opponents' points scored per game, third in the NBA. Offensive rating, first. Defensive rating, third. Net differential, point differential, first. The Sixers were number one in the NBA in field goal percentage. They were number one in field goals made, number one in free throws made, number one in free throws attempted, number one in assists, and number one, of course, in points scored. So who wins? I mean, I just don't know, man. What rules are we playing by? Let's go with late 90s. All right? You can't hand check anymore, but you can't use your elbows. You know, you can use your shoulder at times. You can still knock guys off stride. A defender was not handicapped. Just couldn't use his hands anymore after 95. The game is a mix of inside play, mid-range, and some threes. Now, one of the advantages I see for the 83 Sixers team that comes right to mind is their backcourt. Maurice Cheeks and Andrew Toney. All right? Maurice Cheeks was a defensive master. He was a former all-time leader in steals. He was a strong defender. Strong defender. There was a stretch he was the best defensive point guard in the NBA. And a clutch player. Even though he wasn't noted for his scoring, he could score. And when he did score, it was high efficient shots. You know, he got a lot of transition buckets. And, he took mid-range shots and things of that nature. Andrew Toney, the Boston Strangler, I think would have his fingerprints all over this series, and he may be the X factor. All right, he may be the X factor. One of the problems I'm seeing with the backcourt for the Sixers, the 67 76ers, is their size. All right, it's their size. Hal Greer, what was he, 6'2"? 6'2", 175. Wally Jones, 6'2", 180. Larry Costello, who was 35, 6'1", 186 pounds. And he was an old 35, too. Matt Gukas, now he was taller, 6'5", 175 pounds, but he probably be playing this. They probably have to put Matt Gukas on him, but he would eat him up. He would eat Matt Gukas alive. All right, Andrew Toney. I believe the other guards were Bob Weiss, 6'2", 180. He wasn't really that. I mean, he wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great. And Bill Melchione, 6'1", 165. All right, so Andrew Toney, 6'3", 180, slight height advantage. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Maurice Cheeks, 6'1", 180. Um, I just think the combination. I think they would probably put Maurice Cheeks on Hal Greer, and he would try his best to contain Hal Greer. I don't see Hal Greer having a big series. I mean, he might have one breakout game if it's a 7-game series, but I think Maurice Cheeks probably gives Hal Greer some issues. All right, give him some issues. If he was averaging 22 points a game that season, I see him maybe averaging 18 or 19 against Maurice Cheeks, and efficiency way down. Who's going to guard Andrew Toney for the Sixers? The 67 76ers. Who's going to guard him? That's my big question right there. I'm trying to look at this team and figure out who's going to guard him. Will they insert Billy Cunningham in the starting lineup and put him on him? Because I mean, Billy Cunningham would, but I don't know if Billy Cunningham. I know he was athletic, he was springy, the Kangaroo Kid, but does he have the lateral quickness to stay with a healthy Andrew Toney before the feet problems? I'm not sure about that. I just look at the 67 76ers backcourt, and I don't see a lot of shooting, scoring outside of Hal Greer or range. Even compared to the 83 Sixers, who are not a great three-point shooting team either. But, you know, these guys really didn't have any range for the most part past 19 feet. That could pose a problem. That could pose a serious problem as far as spacing is concerned. The 67 76ers also had Chet Walker, who averaged 19.3 points per game, had a knack for getting to the foul line. Probably is best known as a Bull in the early to mid 70s, but you know, he had some great years with the Philadelphia 76ers as well. I'm just having a hard time seeing Chet Walker being as successful against the 83 Sixers with a front court of Moses Malone, you know, Bobby Jones, Mark Alvarone. I don't know. I don't know if he would, you know, because Chet Walker's game was basically mid-range and slashing. But, you know, Moses Malone was a very physical player. He's all about physicality. And I just don't know if Chet would be doing that with him, Bobby Jones, another great defensive player. I just don't know about that. I mean, who knows? The center position is going to be the thing, though. Wilt Chamberlain versus Moses Malone. That will be the key matchup. That's going to be like a battle of titans. Moses Malone, the MVP that year, 24 points a game, 15 rebounds a game, versus Wilt Chamberlain, the MVP of the league during that season, the 66-67 season, 24 points, 24 rebounds, 8 assists. Probably was averaging about 9 blocks a game if they were keeping track. 68% field goals. Man, that'll be a battle, man. I do think that Wilt will be a little bit reluctant to come up out that paint. Moses, you know, had a jumper. He had a little bit of a jumper. He could shoot out to maybe, from what I could tell, he had a range out to maybe, 15 feet, or so, 14, 15 feet. On occasion, maybe 16 feet. That's about his limit. He could hit some jumpers from time to time from that angle, from that range. But Moses was a workhorse, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just wondering who would control the boards in this series. Because, the Sixers got Wilt Chamberlain and Luke Jackson, the 67 Sixers. Luke Jackson was an enforcer, 6'9", 270. Man, I forgot about Luke Jackson. Yeah, Luke Jackson may be an X factor for the 67 76ers. He may go to work in this series because Bobby Jones would be too small. Luke Jackson was 6'9", 270. Bobby Jones, I hope I didn't say Bobby Jackson. Bobby Jones, even though he was a great defensive forward, Bobby Jones was like, 6'9", 210. Yeah, that will be an X Factor series. X Factor right there, that position. Mark Alvarone, 6'8", 210. Yeah, the power forward position was a little bit of a weakness for the 83 Sixers compared to the other positions. Earl Cureton, excuse me, 6'9", 210. Yeah, they're a little bit undersized in that position. Mark McNamara, their backup center, 6'11", 235. Yeah, and J.J. Anderson. I don't remember if he's on the playoff rotation or not. But anyway, man, it's hard to say who will win this series, man. It really is. If you're going by late 90s rules, the shooting would slightly favor the 83 Sixers. Andrew Toney, I think, could have a couple of games where he could go off and win it for the 83 Sixers. Luke Jackson would be a matchup problem for the 83 Sixers. I could see him having some games where, let's say, Moses and Wilt are going at it. In the event that, say, Wilt gets in foul trouble or something like that, or a game where Moses is getting off and Moses has like 25 points and 21 rebounds and he's outworking Wilt, or Wilt's in foul trouble, Luke Jackson could step up with his physical play. Him being 6'9", 270, strong as an ox, that could be a problem right there. And the one thing that the Sixers were good at, the 67 76ers were good at, were drawing fouls. Wilt Chamberlain, I think Luke Jackson had the ability to do it. I know Chet Walker, that was his game. Let's look at some stuff. Yeah, Chet Walker averaged 7.2 free throws attempt per game. Billy Cunningham averaged almost 7. Yeah, because he was a guy that could slash the basket, so he would get to the line, I know I haven't talked about the doctor, have I? I haven't talked about the doctor. You can't talk about the 83 Sixers without Julius Erving. In this series, I think Julius Erving would really be potentially matched up against Chet Walker and Billy Cunningham. Julius Erving was 33 years old, I think, at this time, 32, 33 years old. Starting to lose a little bit of his athleticism, but still a great athlete, still a great player. Only 2 years removed from his MVP. Julius Erving's, 6'7"-ish, 215. Man, this one is difficult, man. This is a real difficult one to think about because it's so many different pieces and some guys may not play. Julius Erving's a great player. He's not going to be stopped. He's not going to be stopped. I tend to think that Wilt Chamberlain and Moses Malone, that series is, that matchup is going to be a bit of a draw, maybe advantage Wilt. One of the advantages Wilt has is that he's a considerably better passer than Moses. All right, considerably better. So if you double Wilt Chamberlain, then that's going to cause some problems. So with Moses, you would think it will, for the most part, be one-on-one. It won't be too much doubling, because then the 83 Sixers can get themselves in trouble, especially when you got guys that are cutters and slashers like Billy Cunningham and Chet Walker, and even some of the other guys, that could spot up and get, mid-range jumpers and whatnot. So that would be a problem. If it's just one-on-one, I think it would be one hell of a series. But, I don't know. At the end of the day, if I had to just take a guess, I really don't know. I don't know who will win this series. I don't. I really have no idea. That's my honest answer. I have no idea who will win this series, man. I'm trying to think, and I can see it going 7. It can just go any way. It can go any way. Because the 83 Sixers have an advantage, I think, when it comes to athleticism overall. And I think that their backcourt is a little bit more dynamic, and as far as pressure defense and forcing turnovers, and especially if it becomes a half court affair. If it's a lower, I'll tell you this: if it's a lower scoring game, then maybe it would favor the 83 Sixers. If it's a higher scoring game, we're starting to, have Wilt utilize outlet passing and things of that nature. It's more of a free-flowing game. Then maybe the 67-76ers have a better shot at winning the series. But then again, when you have a free-flowing game, that benefits a guy like Julius Erving, right? So I don't know. I really don't know. But tell me what you guys think.